We have two speakers for the next session. The first is Amy Grace. Amy is Director of Digital Strategy at Pratt Whitney. Amy has 35 years with Raytheon, and her passion has been applying new and analytical techniques to deliver products with a measurable impact to customer satisfaction. She spent her first 28 years at Pratt Whitney as a systems engineer before transitioning to Collins Aerospace in 2016 to lead development of aircraft predictive maintenance analytics for the A320 and 787, all of which I'm sure we've flown in. Amy's done some other very interesting things. She's been inducted into the Collins Aerospace Fellows Program as a Fellow of Applied Data Science. She returned to Pratt Whitney in 2020 to lead development of cutting-edge digital solutions to support safe and affordable operation of the F135 Joint Strike Fighter engine. That's very cool. That hasn't appeared in any of the introductions yet. And then we have Saurabh Gupta. Saurabh is Head of Data Strategy and Governance at ThoughtWorks. This is a global technology consulting firm. Through his career, he has worked in the data space in both public and private sectors. Saurabh, prior to ThoughtWorks, led the data portfolio for the Washington, D.C. Government Education Agency, where he led their data transformation initiative. He's played similar roles at various international organizations, including the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, and contributed to the statistics community. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Amy, and she will get started.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to our presentation, and I've enjoyed many of your presentations over the last couple of days, too. So as it said in the introduction, I started as a systems engineer, so I was not in IT or DT either, like many of you had said. In fact, I think probably there wasn't even anything called DT back when I started. But right off the bat, out of college, I worked on fifth generation propulsion down at Pratt Whitney in West Palm Beach. Nice change from Syracuse, New York, especially that first winter. And over the years, when you're an engineer, you develop, design, certify, and then you go on to the next engine. So I worked on engine that went into the F-22, and we worked on, systems engineering, solving hard problems, trying to make an engine that would, work amongst a lot of constraints. So I got to work on things that would let the airplane do really cool maneuverability, working with Lockheed. Then I went on to the Joint Strike Fighter, and then I went on to a commercial program, and I thought, I don't know if I can just keep doing this lather, rinse, repeat, design, develop. Like, what happens after they actually get into the field? So I had the opportunity to follow one of the engines that I worked on into service, and it was just a real greenfield space for a lot of great data that we designed with intent, but other problems to solve. And I would say in that phase, they were really underserved with the type of technology and tools that we had as engineers designing the engines in the first place. So that became my passion, because at the very end, that was the intersection of the customer satisfaction with that product that we designed. And I learned that that was really what makes me tick, is kind of like the end satisfaction with what we designed. So it was another systems engineering problem, different data, but the same mindset. We're the drivers. How can we use data to get better insights and optimize? This is all before we even coined the term data science. So from there, I went into even older programs, and there was a strong desire to better use engine data to improve operational readiness and reduce total ownership costs. So I got into prognostics and health management. And again, another systems engineering problem, how to use data to predict when the different systems on the aircraft would need maintenance and keep them flying. So from there, I went into military and commercial engines, overall prognostics and health management development, and got to work on our new commercial program called Pure Power, which had 15% reduced fuel burn, which I will tell you as an engineer, we would give our firstborn for that, but it was some new technology, and just being able to anticipate reliability risks and provide proactive ways of looking at this. This is really risk management. From there, I went to the 787 as they said, and same thing applied with other aircraft systems. So I did come back to to Pratt Whitney because the opportunity to work on the Joint Strike Fighter, with it in service, especially at a time in the world where more countries are reaching out to us, given the state of the world and some of the new threats. It really is it's home for me. So I came back, and what did I find? A sea of spreadsheets. No, so I really realized that the people that have the hardest job to do, arguably, to be able to keep these engines and airplanes flying every day, were some of the most underserved with technology. And the analytical skills that I just was so used to all around me during the design phase weren't really spread out, well enough on the other side. They just were underserved. So that's kind of what I saw. We could build new dashboards, we could build new tools, but what we saw was on the back end of that, the data was largely 70% sourced in spreadsheets. And why is that? Because in engineering, we have a lot of different enterprise systems. The engineers design in Team Center, and then the business is run in SAP, and you run a factory with a manufacturing execution solution. But in sustainment, we have to work with data from all of those. And if you ask anybody, they'll say those systems don't talk to each other. So what do we, as analysts, what do we have as the common denominator? Microsoft Office. So, we attend meetings, we capture information, we put it in spreadsheets. Every day, that information changes. There's different versions of the truth. We do the analysis, we put it in PowerPoint, we communicate, and all the while, I think we're responding to requests, perfectly logical requests for data that people would not, if they just asked the question, what would it take to, and then make the request of what we want to see? Or do we have the data to, and then ask their question? And so as a result, the workforce is just, leaving that meeting, working for 3 weeks to come back and answer the questions. And it really wasn't a data-first culture. So that's what I came back to. If you look at what it's like in a day of the life, they will like ask for tools. People are asking for tools and asking for dashboards. Those who are trying to serve that, whether it's our DT organization or some of the developer teams, the first thing they have to do is find out what data and where it is and how to join it and how to curate it and how to put it together. That's largely 60 to 70% of the job all the time. The making of the dashboard is usually easy. This culture where the different people are joining the data themselves, they end up with different versions of the truth, data quality issues, and people so many times have said, what data do I trust? It's really hard in that situation to be able to point to and know the data and what's the most up to date and what to use. And then because of all the time it takes to assimilate that data, there's really little time to analyze it, interpret it, understand what it's telling you, and then make the right decision of what actions to take to get the outcomes that you want. So we had a couple events in the beginning. We had a visionary team planning. The whole workforce was really clear on what they wanted, and they all spoke the language very well. They wanted the right data at the right time. They wanted data-driven decisions. They wanted a workforce that was empowered to be effective, both with modern environments to work in and the training to know how to use them effectively. And we all agreed we wanted operations excellence. We understood what performance we were trying to drive and what targets we were trying to hit. And we wanted to be able to use technology to be able to achieve those outcomes. So around the time when we literally had a data quality, we had a data stand down, when we realized that the business just kept asking for more and more tools. And behind it, 70% of the source was spreadsheets, and the workforce was starting to buckle in their ability to keep up with producing data in that way as the fleet grew. We have, at the time, over 1,000 engines in the fleet, and it just wasn't scaling. So some of the questions we asked was like, how do we reduce the amount of time that we spend collecting that data? We were able to quantify very easily by surveying the directors across the organization I won't share the number with you, but let's just say it funded the business case. And we had a target of 40% reduction, and that was something that we knew how to instrument and measure for. What is the path to ownership? How do we actually have owners of the data? Because everybody has said, it's this. People can be producers of the data and consumers, but nobody wants to be the owner of the data because everybody inherently understands the quality issues and aren't sure how they're going to be able to keep up with the requests that are made of them. So how do when you field a jet engine, the first thing that happens is there's a production ramp. Then they're operated for a while. Then they come in for a scheduled overhaul. It's like a scheduled hospital visit. And that time where you're trying to achieve your readiness goals, and now you've got to take them off wing and put them through the depot for overhaul. That's like a significant event in the world of sustainment. So how do we keep flying when we're having to take some of those engines out? That was one of our challenges. And then, the best part of my job is being able to equip the people on my team with the latest technology. So how could we get that technology into their hand? And then, understanding what was happening in the world of data, like everybody is talking about today. But then where do we start? Where do we start? We are a very data-rich program, and we have access to it. It comes to our doors. We don't have those problems, Where do we start was one of the things I think we all wondered when we engaged ThoughtWorks. We came up with our strategic roadmap. So we looked at 3 horizons as we started our initiative with ThoughtWorks. One was simplifying the path to insights, like start off with strategic use cases and build out the underlying capability while delivering value. And the 3 use cases that we chose were very important. They had to be very relevant to the business. We wanted to be able to then shift using that underlying capability to accelerate our data product production and to be able to reuse the data, to be able to solve more or to produce data products and use cases that were aligned to our program objectives at a faster rate. And then our hope ultimately is with underlying data that's analytics ready, we'll start to be able to utilize AI and ML to further optimize our business. However, we're very disciplined that we know that nobody gets distracted by the bright, shiny things that are coming out. Everybody really has a healthy appreciation for kind of like the table stakes to be able to start hoping for those aspirations. So we try to get into what we call the virtuous cycle of intelligence, where we thought of data first, create data as a product, make sure that we understood the outcomes and the insights we're trying to get to that data. We actually mapped the decisions that are made all the way across our value stream and the data that we would need to be able to make those decisions, then take action. And a lot of this is one of the things we thought, how do we assess the goodness of our decisions? And when you take action, how can you instrument it to be able to see what actually happened and learn from that as well and pivot? So that was kind of our aspirations. And I think one of the things that we saw is we spent way too much time collecting and curating the data and manually correcting the quality. And we were doing reporting, but I wouldn't say we were doing a lot of the kind of analysis that I was used to, as a propulsion systems analyst. So we wanted to be able to, from this engagement and our adoption of data mesh, be able to reduce the time on the manual things, automate some of those data quality checks, enable access to modern software and infrastructure to be able, and built out environments that'll help us to produce the data in a more efficient way and consume the data. And then find the different groups that are analytical thinking and just enable them and bring those use cases to the forefront to try to improve the overall analytics capability. So as you can see with my friend Saurabh here, we chose data mesh as our strategy, and we engaged ThoughtWorks as our partner. There's a couple reasons for that. ThoughtWorks, I think I can say, coined the term data mesh, and also really understood that it wasn't just about the platform and the technology, but really spoke to us in terms of the importance of data as a product and ownership by the domains and decentralizing that and the different things we would need to be successful in that, so that we don't just fall back to it's another way of, storage and compute of data. So we really are aware of the change management that needs to go along with this and data governance. I mean, one of the things we did an 8-week discovery, and they said, we're going to add a little on the statement of work. We're going to add a little section on data governance. You might be a little weak in that. And I was like, I've worked here 35 years, and I know we don't ever talk about that, And if anybody did, that was probably when I was in the back of the room with my eyes kind of going backwards, because like somebody said, it wasn't the fun, exciting part of this, But I also realized in engineering, we had governance built into our data. We were very good about the models we were building, the data we needed to collect, the testing we did, that we had data and analysis tools that were far ahead of its time back then in the engineering community, which is probably a big factor of why we won that 5th gen competition, and we've been the sole provider of propulsion for the last 30 years. But I grew up, that's what I came out of college, so I was in that environment. So for a long time, we had that kind of built in, but it wasn't that way outside of engineering. So I actually am really excited about data governance right now, and this concept of not just being able to say, look, I produce data as a product, but look, here it is. It's in the dictionary. People are contributing. They know about the data. They know how to use it. They know the owner. They know the quality of it, because I believe data quality gets better over time with use. And I think these are all really important factors. So we embarked on this. I think one of the most important contributions I can say with ThoughtWorks is they spent a lot of time. I am not the DT group. I am on the program side. I have a very capable digital team, but I am not DT. We spent a lot of time on the operating model. What is the operating model? How do we work with ThoughtWorks and our DT organization and roles and responsibilities, and how to make them feel like they're still playing a critical role, even if they aren't the ones making the applications anymore. The ability to serve up compliant infrastructure that can help us, build something that has a fast and visible path to authority to operate. That's important. We can't do that without them. So that was one of the things that I think was really important to come out of this. And now we're partners in developing that architecture, working with the business to produce data as a product, and starting to say, the first time you say, this is where you go to get the data, and there's a download center now, and people are coming there instead of emailing files around. Very exciting. And then the federated data governance. There's pockets of data governance. There was even a council in our company of professionals that are very passionate about this. And the neat thing is ThoughtWorks helped us beef up our data governance. We went very naturally to those groups and started working with them. And the people that are passionate about it, by and large, they're some of the younger professionals too. So that's really, I think, also bodes well for the future. So show, shift, and scale has served us very well. We've completed the show phase. We had our 3 use cases. We've demonstrated the value. The business stands up and tells the before and after story about that. They quantify the benefits. That's been really helpful. We're in shift right now. We're starting to think of data products as like we're a data product factory, and we were at low rate of production in the beginning. But as we built up the reusable capability, we should be expecting a higher rate of production. And just like factory operations, we should be able to be alerted if that production line gets clogged or slowed down, and come and diagnose that, understand the constraints, and further build out what we call reusable capability, or improve our processes so that we keep working towards that goal of faster rate of production of data products. Now, Saurabh's going to talk to you about the thin slice approach, which really worked for us. And how do you bring about all of that change and all of those capabilities? This is part of the where we started and how to kick all of that and get that flywheel going across all those areas.
Thanks, Amy. So I think in many of the sessions over the last 2 days, we have been hearing that don't boil the ocean, start smart, choose the right use cases to make it a winning story, ease out adoption. So we follow an approach called thin slice, where we work across all the layers of the data lifecycle, the business user adoption, the change management, and build or implement capabilities which will help adoption faster. We will be able to establish a success or what matters and why we are doing this. So we had 6 areas which we focused on. One is as a part of the thin slice, we worked very, very closely with the business users and identified 3 use cases which were not only very much in alignment with the business strategy for the F135 program, but also we had strong stakeholders to support it, who would be able to. I built a solution and I talk about it versus I built it for someone and someone talking about it is just a very different story. So some of those things, other condition which we kept in mind is when we choose these use cases, can we build reusable capabilities, which will help us accelerate the onboarding of future data products use cases faster. So from a use case point of view, we started choose the right one. Then we started looking into what is an architecture, existing architecture in the organization that we should build with. Any large organization, bringing new tools, technology becomes hard. They go through a cycle. So we worked on a reference architecture, which will be the minimum viable architecture to launch our first use cases. Along with that, we also started looking into what the operating model for the future is going to look like. But from where we were and where we want to go, there will be multiple steps. So we got a lot of stakeholders together from technology, from business, from data, from Amy's team, from digital strategy, and worked out a plan. And in the process, we figured out there's a gap in terms of where the business user need to be. How do we sort of support that transition? So we came up with a concept of something called an enablement team. An enablement team is in the digital strategy team with Amy, which bridges the gap between the business users and the technology users, and slowly sort of inculcate some of the best practices around data and transition to the business users. While we were doing this, at the end of the discovery process, we realized there are 2 areas which require a focused attention. One being governance, which Amy talked about, that we had to get special, we created a separate track, we got people involved in that. The other was change management. And I think change management is a very, very key track, which is very much needed from all levels, not just from the users, from leaders, all the way from executive leadership, so that there is a constant communication, messaging, training. And we are also talking about, can we bring it into the annual assessment? How do we incentivize the users, the owners, the producers to adopt better? So we took a thin slice which touches on all these aspects, not to the fullest, but sort of a step forward. And the end of the show phase was where we established all the areas where we have worked on, what are the benefits it's created. But also we took the opportunity to figure out what didn't work and what adjustments we need to make. So pass it on to you.
Yeah. So this is a summary of, on the left-hand side is the data products and value that we were working with the business to develop. And on the right side is the platform and reusable capabilities that we built along the way. And I think measuring is really important, to have expectations and to be able to take the data to measure versus your expectations. And a lot of this is, I was learning too, and I'm thinking, okay, if we build out this reusable capability, the first use case may be a little slow, but the second one should be a little faster, and the one after that should be faster as well. And when you go in knowing what you're going to measure, it's easier to have the data to be able to make that measurement as you go along. So, and it ended up being that way. You know, the first one, I think it says, what, 20 to 30 weeks or whatever to get the very first use case out there. But at that point, you know, what we had developers before, but they didn't have, you know, a CI/CD environment. They weren't set up with the right capability to do this. They used whatever they could. So just even, you know, being able to have that, or, you know, the ability to build out our platform with the, you know, the ability to launch jobs and store the data, and to the compute for the different processes that we did on the data, and the linkages, the input ports, the output ports to the ways that we were going to consume the data, whether it's business intelligence tools or availability of data in formats that could be used in other applications, APIs, et cetera. So all of those things, you know, that we put in place helped us. That, you know, we created a data product bootstrapper kit. So that was that other people outside of our group could create their own data products. So did that work? You know, were we able to take somebody outside of the enablement team, and what happened when they tried to use the data product bootstrapper? You know, what did we learn from that? How are the playbooks? How do we train them? Because the people are out there working with data all the time. The key to the flywheel is going to be, can you get them to produce data in this way? So the second one was, well, I can't see that one, was like four weeks, 8 weeks?
It's 6 weeks.
6 weeks. So the second one, you know, we started saying some of this data is locked up in our enterprise systems, and just getting it out from those operational systems into an analytical plane, you know, was some of the things. How do we replicate that data in a way we can use it? Because we can't query SAP directly or do analysis like that. So some of that data was hard to extract. There's an art just to even knowing how to get to data in SAP, I'm sure many of you can appreciate. But even then, we were able to use the other capability that was faster. And then by the end, it was a couple weeks, you know, to use that capability to go after data products. And then by then, we also knew how to assess the complexity of the data, and how to work with the business to see which data products were most high in demand, and which ones impacted our program goals, customer goals. So we had a way to prioritize the data that we went after. And at the same time, we're also standing up Agile, you know. So we took the opportunity between show and shift to do program increment planning and have Agile coaches coming in, and to really understand how many Agile teams can we stand up, and how would we divvy the work out. So it's just a lot of change all at once. But it's, again, if you have expectations of how you think you should be able to operate guiding you, you know, I think it's easier to keep focus. I also am lucky. I have some young people on my team that just really wanted to be natural bloggers. You know, they're like, I always wanted to write, you know. So the ability for them to communicate and explain in words that others could find was a gift, you know. But I do feel like working with ThoughtWorks, for every one of these areas, I had people, but they had people coaching them. So obviously the platform team, the change management side of this, the data governance, we really have them paired up. So you know, you also have to have a strategy of how you're going to grow in to be able to do this on your own, or where you would engage ThoughtWorks in other areas in the future.
So I just want to add one sentence here. Like, Amy wants to build an assembly line for automated assembly line for churning out data products. So that's what her aim is.
Well, I read the goal. So, I mean, I actually saw it in the 1980s, and I didn't know what they were talking about, but I came back to it many years afterwards, and it just really resonates. You know, I mean, that's, I think, really the way to understand where your constraints are and how to problem solve around that. Okay, so our gaps. Where are our gaps today? We still are, you know, from the data architecture standpoint, we're working in an area of a lot of change. We started with AWS. That's what we were using. Our DT group is moving more towards Microsoft Azure. and having managed services around that. So we started and we had to swap out some of these things. We're looking at Databricks and how can we simplify our platform and making it more powerful for that. That's exciting to me because I always was a little nervous about turnkey solutions because I'm like, how is that going to keep up with the technology when it's changing so fast? So I'm extremely pleased that I see the teams already in just this short time being able to understand what technology is becoming available and what we need, managing technical debt, all of these things. I think that, culturally, we still have a challenge because the people that we're trying to change the way they work with data, even if we're trying to give them a better value proposition for automating some of the manual work, the fact of the matter is they are very, very busy every day. And our fleet is growing every day, and new challenges come at us in the world every day. And so that's one concern too, is that how do you manage the transition and make it easier for them to do what we want them to do and harder to do what we don't want them to do, because we did start with a pretty complex tool landscape that people were using, so you have to have a migration or sunsetting of that as well. And then, just the data governance. We're finding the people who, the concept of a business glossary appeals to them, and they'll take the time to be able to describe their data. And all it takes is somebody to be first in that area, and others will follow. And it's not always the same person that's first. The most powerful use case may not be really, she may not want to take the time to populate, data governance. But the second one, who is working on cost, for whatever reason, just that appealed to them. So not always the same use case or person is first, but find those people and find your champions out there. Okay. Okay. How are we going to move to the shift phase? I think there can't be any dissonance between goal alignment and our program objectives and the use cases and the underlying data products. They all have to be connected, So we came up with a really creative way of showing concentric circles with the goals in the middle, the use cases, and then the data products. And I cannot tell you how much that, whatever, the cognitive approach that this one woman in my team came up with, everybody's like, yes, that's it, So keeping the program goals literally at the center. And then, there's developer teams out there. They're out there. They're the ones producing the dashboards. They're the ones that are figuring out how to get at the data. So how to engage them and incentivize them and make them excited about contributing to this. I have a very savvy boss and vice president who said our objective is 70% of essential data is available as data products in the mesh. So that is a smart and savvy objective from somebody, at that level. How to get people to feel like, it's, we talk about the producer of the month. We set up a web page. How do we make that visible and reward them? Give them an iPad or whatever for the data producer a month, or something to get people excited about joining, and then others will see. And then others will become interested, and then you get a little FOMO there, So, creating that buzz and incentivizing and then gamifying, I've seen that work really well. And then, extending support to the business users to be able to scale the data product delivery. And, I do think it is a flywheel. And I think this next, 6 months is going to be critical to be able to launch and really start to multiply our values. And I know you have a couple more in the industry.
So, thank you, Amy. Actually, we have been talking about data mesh, like in this conference. Like I have heard data mesh more number of times that I had heard it in last 6 months. Everyone has been talking about data mesh. So we thought we'll bring in some industry experience in terms of from our clients, what work we have done, how they were different from each other. Data mesh was coined around 4 years ago, and over a course of 4 years, we followed everything that was written in the book and see like how do we implement a data mesh for our customers, for our different use cases. And in the process, what we learned is like no two implementations are same. The needs are very different, the maturity, the readiness is very different. And I think the core focus which we always found, which aligns with the executive leadership, is create success, show value, and it should be done in a way that it can continue to go that direction. So I have 3 use cases which I want to share, and each one of them is very, very different. One is from an insurance company, one is from a pharmaceutical company, and one is from an e-commerce retailer. And the reason I wanted to bring these 3 case studies here is like each one of them is a data mesh implementation, but a very, very different goal, very different intent. I know we don't have much time, so I'm going to walk through these 3 slides very fast. We do have like a table outside, so if anyone is interested in hearing more from Amy or from any of these use cases, we'll be very happy to walk you through. Before we do that, I really want to know, is there anyone who hasn't heard about data mesh? Like, I'm sure there's no one, but I did want to check, like, is there anyone who have not, or is hearing it for the first time?
They're not going to raise their hand now.
I know. I should have asked other way around, like, but I just wanted to bring up, like, this particular approach has picked so much of excitement because it does meet what the business users need. It brings data so close to the business user, they empower the business user that they can extract value out of their data very fast. Now, when it comes to Amy's needs, I'm not sure if data mesh can meet the fighter jet speed or not, but we can definitely shrink the time in which we can get the data to her users. One of the core principles or tenets of data mesh is bring operational data and analytical data closer in a way that they are managed better, they are owned better, and they're accessible faster. So that's what data mesh is all about. So this particular example is from a large insurance company. We started working with them, and we realized that they have huge data warehouses, multiple data marts, totally fragmented data, monolithic architecture. And every time there's a new use case or a new business need, it will take months to do it. So what we did here is we started focused on, like, let's identify what your core needs are, how we can do it. And this was one of the first data mesh engagements that we took up, and we spent a lot of time in establishing that in place of looking at data from left to right, from producer to consumer, I think we should look at right to left, where why you need this data, do you really need this, and how fast we can make it happen for you. So in the initial stock taking, we figured out they need at least 100, 150 data products, and they wanted it fast. So what we did is we started building a platform, and one of the approaches which we always take is make reusable capability so that next iteration gets faster and faster. So once the platform went live, we released 50 data products within 2 months, and we also did something called we built a workbench so that the business users or the power users can start building more of themselves. And over the course of next 6 months or so, over 200 plus new data products were built. Why I bring this particular example here is, like, this was going on and then COVID hit. And the needs of this organization totally changed. They wanted to have a faster response to COVID. They wanted to understand how many users are really taking benefits of the telemed. And most of these use cases were then deployed within a matter of a couple of weeks. So that's the capability that some of these practices bring in. And these are not technology solutions. These are technology, we call it socio-technical solutions because it's technology supported by people, practices, processes together. The second one is a German retailer. It's one of the largest in Germany, and they had, their executive leadership wanted to really leverage the data they have, the customer data, the sales data, the product data, and empower their partners who are selling on the platform so that they can come up with better approaches for sales, better loyalty programs. And being in Europe, one of the very, very tight constraints around GDPR. And what we did is, as a team, we put together like a whole new set of data governance program around an ownership program where each of these data sets were turned into data products. And a lot of automation were put in place so that depending on the roles, I will have access to data only which I want to. But if someone else who has a higher level of authority wants to look into the names, the profile, they should be able to. In past, like traditionally, many times what either happens is there are multiple data products to do it, which means latency in updates, issues around keeping them consistent. Using a cohesive approach of a data product, this was done. And the adoption was very high. Like within a course of 3 months, 80% of their partners were using it and they were taking value to their customers. And the last one I want to bring up is this is a large pharmaceutical organization out of Europe. Interesting thing with them is they had a self-service platform, and they were serving out raw data tables to their consumers. One of the challenges they were facing is interoperability. Now, if marketing team needs to build a new pitch, they'll take data from 5 different places to try to match it, and it'll take them months to do it. Now, with interoperability in mind, like a core, like these data products were built for them. Now, there are many such examples, but the reason why we thought bringing these, like you heard from what we are doing, what is being done in Pratt and Whitney and these 3 organizations, like each solution, needs are going to be different, and they are going to be driven by what the business users want.
Oh, this is very simple. This is, we had a courageous leader. Jen Laka is our vice president of the F-35 program. She took enough time to understand, deeply understand the data situation to be able to, she was very smart and sharp about understanding different options and why we selected the one we did. And she helped with securing funding and breaking down any cultural barriers to this change in the different roles of program versus IT. The time that we spent aligning on that operating model with DT, even though it set us behind a little bit in the beginning, was well worth it. I can see everybody can be the hero of their story, and you know, before it was like the developer teams versus DT. You know, the developer teams felt that they weren't getting access, and of course DT wanted to have compliant and wanted to keep things under control, but this operating model was really key. The initial use cases are important. Ours were around forecasting removals. That's the foundation of all of our sustainment, and the accuracy of those removals and the understanding where the differences are so we can calibrate those models. Shop visit cost to help with affordability analysis. And the last was a case where we can compare data in 2 different systems to identify the differences so that we can go correct the source system. As I mentioned, each use case provided a different kind of champion in terms of more analytical versus one that was leaning in on data governance. And then having those 2 dedicated, you know, we got permission to hire those 2 different roles so that it wasn't just me driving change management and data governance. So, and then the last is we have fun. So, you know, letting people go out. Somebody else mentioned we did the same thing, sending the people out to the Databricks AI conference and getting them excited and charged up about what they're seeing. And, you know, travel budget is the best investment that you'll make. You know, just supporting their families, you know, being like a family, having a fun and positive environment is, I think, we spend a lot of time at work, so I will end it there, is make it fun. Okay? Yeah. I think that's it, right?
That's it.
So we have a bit of time for some questions. I don't have any questions coming in online, but anyone here? Saw your hand first in the back.
Thank you for the presentation. And I have a question for you, Amy. You mentioned very briefly migration and sunsetting. So I presume that is no green field and you are dealing with some level of let's switch the old ways off. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit more about whether the thin slice that proved all the elements of the solution, included some of the switch off. And then just another very kind of stupid question. What is a turnkey solution? Because you mentioned a turkey thing with...
Oh, turnkey solution.
Oh, a turnkey solution.
Turnkey. Okay.
I thought
Yeah,
it was an Americanism. Okay,
sorry.
thank
Yeah,
you.
it's when you buy the whole thing and then, yeah. Okay, the first question, the thin slice, yeah, I think, like I said, it was picking the right use cases. So we picked a use case that had a cumbersome process today, and they were willing to change. And then, so that, in both cases, their problem was just aggregating the data and taking the data from the upstream producers. And so with those cases, it was pretty easy to change over. You just have to make sure you do the right kind of user acceptance testing. And so when they're doing their process, just make sure their people hands-on are the one doing it and follow through to where you're actually measuring the benefits that are expected in that. Some of the other use cases, I think that, if you say you're going to automate reports, then you got to make sure it's not to everybody, automate my report, because they're still tending to ask for reports and visualizations, and we're trying to, what I talked about the wheel, we call it the wheel of fortune of data, is just to have them start with talking about the data first. And you can see, like, if the same data is needed in 6 different tools, it's much easier for us to then have them align on producing data as a product and the approach that we go after on that. The other thing was usage analytics. So some of these tools that we built to custom to somebody that they're like, we had to have this. And then you go back and say, who's actually using it? And there's tiles on the dashboard and things like that. And some of it nobody was using. Well, that's an indication that it was not serving the purpose of that community anyway. So I think those are the things. Yeah.
So Simon, just to add a couple of more points on that. Yes, there were some tools or processes were sunsetted and it was needed because they were so manual intensive that the moment we brought in automation, there was a uptick. But in the process, I also want to caution that we consciously took up some tech debt because we knew like this thin slice doesn't cover all the capabilities we need. And there was we had several discussions around that. Should we wait to build the capability or should we agree on some tech debt and move on? And I think that was one of the good decisions we took, that it is easier to take some tech debt into your planning, but over a course of time, make sure that you get rid of it. Ensure that option starts sooner than later.
Other questions?
Yeah. Oh, thank you for the presentation. I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit on what it took to get the DT organization on the same page. I think that's something a lot of us struggle with, and I would wonder, what was that process like? What was the thing that made it click and got everybody aligned?
The first thing is listen. So listen to their perspective, listen to the concerns. I would say we had 2 very skilled negotiators from ThoughtWorks, and find that common ground and start to build off that common ground. Document it. The other thing is document it and make sure it's almost like a contract. You're signing off from it, so then it couldn't slide back to other people's interpretation of it. That was really important. Can you think of anything else?
I think in the process, like when we were listening to them, like they had some genuine concerns, and they also have constraints which they have to comply to. So how do we find the middle ground? But one of the things which I think as a leadership team that Amy has been forcing into the system is make it a win for everyone. So every time we had something successful, we made sure that everyone feels inclusive about it. They know that they had a share to play. So in place of having 2 teams competing against each other, bring it together as one was one of the most important things. It's hard. It took us a lot of time.
It's trust in the end.
Yeah.
I mean, in the end, it's the listening and then it's the trust. And then when you see each other operating that way, I think it builds. Yep.
Thank you. Greg Cunin, UNC Health. I kind of wanted to build on that. We've had a data governance program for quite a while, and I've found as we have gone out and tried to explain to our doctors and nurses and everybody else in the health system we almost have to make excuses for the word governance. And I love the fact that you created a data enablement team.
Yeah.
And I just wonder about, if you had to think about those functions being together, and given the experience, you have a data governance function and a data enablement function, would you have any reservations about what would you put first, and what would your concerns be about?
Yeah, so we have DATSIS principles and data mesh. There's FAIR principles. Vaultus is what the government uses. But all of them is an aspect of the data is discoverable, it's accessible, it's interoperable. So to me, if I watch a data pipeline produced a new data product and now I can see it, it's code there. But I can't look up in a data dictionary, or I can't read about it to understand what it is or who the owner is or what the quality is and that it's getting better over time, then I just did another data storage, and maybe compute thing. So to me, the interesting part is this concept of the reusable capability makes it easy for people who know the most about the data to be able to make those connections and accomplish those tasks. So for example, the data product Bootstrapper we talked to, but we're also creating automation so that the business can enter what they know about the information. It'll automatically populate. We're now using Informatica, automatically populate that. But, to me, as I'm watching the scalability of this, we're keeping a scorecard, and I will tell you, the ones we're all green on is the data product exists. How do I know the data products exist? The ones we're still, on the scorecard working through is where's the link to the catalog, and let me see these things and let me read about them. So the interoperability between that stack and the data, governance tool is important because that's got to be frictionless too. So we just we score. We have a scorecard and we're watching, and again looking at trends and addressing them until the intended outcome is that I know about the data, I can find it, and I'm like, give me a link. If it's there, give me a URL. It's either there or it's not. Yeah, I can either see it or I cannot, So these are some of the kind of things we're doing to try to nudge to make those come together. Yep.
Hi, Duncan McCaskill, the CDAO for the Department of the Navy. You make a lot of great products. I'm a big fan for defense and commercial clients. This is one propulsion platform for one critical airframe. Is this a discrete data enterprise for that particular engine, or do you extend it to all of your offerings?
So that's another thing. I started off in an organization that had to serve all military engines, and the only reason I went to this one program is we had to focus on two areas, 6th gen in the design phase and F135 in the sustaining phase. We just had to focus. But we do test that this works, and some of the ways we did that is we have a Spark Day in our company where you can just stop for 24 hours and come up with a problem and solve. And what we did was we took somebody from F-117 engine, which was from the C-17 platform, and he had an idea. These people are the thinkers. They've been on this program for a long time. They know the way they want to look at the data, but they are not equipped with teams like what I have. So we put the teams together, and he said, I want to be able to look at not just scrap, but critical scrap, which is a combination of the price and the volume of scrap. I mean, he knew exactly what he wanted. And we had scrap as one of our data products, so we said, let's enter Spark Day. And is it possible for us to take our data on the F-135 and build out his vision, on the F-117 in 24 hours? And we did, and we looked at it with live dashboards. That's when I thought, this is all starting to really work. Now we have to go back and say, how do we provision a data mesh instance for that program? And then now the data sources we understand, and is it possible to quickly make those data products and deliver that capability to that program? And our leaders on the other military programs, they accept that. They don't want to wait a whole year till everything's done. But is it possible to take that instance and create those value-added use cases? And we're experimenting with that.
Yeah. So just to add, when we were planning the design of the platform, we were talking about reusable capabilities. But in this, to address exactly what you asked, we are looking into how to make the mesh reusable so that it can extend across multiple programs. And as a part of that, many of the data products which are designed or the connection pipe, the CI/CD links, they should be reusable too.
And I'll just say one more thing on that. We're working with the Air Force on a project called Digital Thread Working Group. So to prove that our data mesh and our system can talk to the government systems as they're standing them up, and picked a high value add use case for that where we would be exchanging data and models so that the government can use those models. So we're staying in lockstep and making sure that interoperability goes across platforms as well.
Wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Both of you, thank you so much. And Amy, the way you explained, what I understand is the data owners and users, and you on the program side and the DT, the Trinity, right? You're making it work. And I understand also that enablement and change management, you have established it as a pillar right from the beginning. I've been in transformational programs where I didn't do that, was difficult. I also have experience where this really works. But it's still hard, even if you start right at the beginning, right? So the top management is saying, this is very good, go, go, go. The users are excited because you're making it fun and useful. But the mid-level managers have their yearly objectives, right?
Oh, yeah.
So how are you bridging that with your championing, on the...
Yeah, you are exactly right. If you have clarity of purpose at the vice president level, but the middle management is not engaged, that is a really tough one. So I will just say, we are starting with data awareness training 101, and it's starting at the executive level. And so, my boss said, every person of this grade level and above in these two organizations is going to be required to take that training. I will schedule it from my calendar. I will give the lead, I will give the intro in that. So, and she included 4 levels of management in that. So, that is, I mean, it's commitment, but it's also, a way to drive alignment and visibility. And if we don't do it like that, it's not going to work because you're just fighting that middle layer. Yeah.
So one of the challenges which we saw is exactly related to those layers. And when we picked, for the initial use cases, when we picked we picked the use cases in a way we get strong stakeholders. And in spite of doing that, we ran into glitches. We didn't see the whole thing to fruition. So we thought we are done with it, but the last mile, which is the most important from the business user, was missing. And they were not happy about it, in spite of being the best use case. And then we had to do quite a few course corrections, and it needed involvement from people at multiple levels. Like Amy had to get from a strategic level to assure that this is going to happen. We got people from different levels to work it out. It wasn't easy, but I think as far as we are learning in the process, that is important.
Sheer will.
We have time for maybe one more question. Anybody else? Seeing none, I think we're done here.
Thank you very
so
much.
much for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.